Welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoy. Only I can see the stranger in my granddaughter's photos. He has no face. Part 2. And she pointed, her finger coming to rest on the screen on a man in the background, sitting on a bench with his back to us. His face, obviously, was not visible. He was wearing a suit. The next photo she found was of all of the great-grandchildren at a water park for her cousin's birthday. She was on a slide, and in the background, at the concession stand, his back to the camera, was a man in a suit. Same height, same hair color and style, same suit. An old-fashioned suit with pinstripes. How odd no one had ever noticed him before. She showed me another from Six Flags. She was playing carnival games, and behind her at one of the other games, throwing balls to attempt to knock down weighted jugs, was the man in the suit. His back, as always, was to the camera, his face unseen. I was not convinced that he was actually faceless, just that she had never seen him except with his back turned. But the fact it appeared to be the same man in all these photos of her was very disconcerting. Who was he? Have you told Mom and Dad? I asked. She shook her head quickly. They say I'm making him up. They don't think it's the same man. It looks like the same man to me, I frowned. How often do you see him? She went quiet for a long time, then finally whispered, "Every day." "Every day?" I exclaimed. "Where? Where do you see him?" "He's looking in the window." I spun to look over my shoulder. There was no one at the window. But I swear, just for an instant, I thought I glimpsed motion. The flash of a figure, there and then gone. I had a word with my children, of course, and my grandchildren, but none of them took much of what I had to say very seriously. They seemed to think I am going senile. Celia told me that it is her opinion that the faceless man can be only seen by the very young or very old, and that when he is getting ready to take you, he becomes quite persistent, trying to talk to you all the time. She said that if I want to try talking to him for her, I should look for him in reflections. So I have. I watched the windows and mirrors. I watched the movement in puddles on the road after the rain. And, just recently, last week when Celia came over, I saw him. Caught a glimpse in the spoon that was on the table between us. I didn't even register his reflection at first. Didn't even know it was him, really, until he shifted slightly, and I looked and realized there was a figure there. I glanced up, and he was gone. And when I looked at the reflection again, he wasn't there. But I got better at seeing him after that. He only appeared when my great-granddaughter was over in the afternoons. I took her for walks because it was easier to catch him that way, and it felt like I was running out of time. Celia was irritable all the time now. She barely spoke to me. Her parents told me they were going to take her home early from her month's stay with her grandparents and me. I hoped this meant that the faceless man would leave her alone, but I didn't know. And so I was desperate to meet with him before she left. And 3 days ago, it finally happened. She was waiting in line for ice cream, and I looked in a puddle and saw his reflection, standing there next to me. I looked up, and there he was, in the flesh. He was watching her, his head turned so that I could not see his face, only his pinstriped suit and polished shoes, and gleaming oiled hair. "Oh," I said, "you're him." "Do you want to see my face?" he asked. His voice was strong, surprisingly clear, and even pleasant. Nothing ghostly or unusual about him at all. He must have been a perfectly ordinary man, an ordinary man who was stalking my great-granddaughter. I snorted at him and stepped closer, because while I may be a very old man, I was at one time in the Navy and still remembered how to throw a punch, or take one, if need be. And anyway, I was not worried about what might happen to me, so I grabbed his shoulder. "Now see here," I began. But when I turned him to face me, there was no face. Only the back of his head. No matter which way I looked at him, I was looking at the back of his head. I felt dizzy, suddenly, as now I was facing the front of him. Lapels, white shirt and necktie, and above the tie, his neck and the oiled gloss of his hair. He was like an owl that had turned his head all the way around. Only his head did not move. I gasped, stepping all around him. No matter where I stepped, it was the back of his head. He chuckled, asked in a higher-pitched giggle, "Do you want to see my face?" "No," I said. "No." He was laughing. My legs buckled. I think I fainted. When I came to, Celia was beside me. So were staff from the ice cream shop. An ambulance, my children, her grandparents, arrived soon after. Everyone very concerned for me, but my biggest worry, as the paramedics looked me over, was that in the crowd, among the shoppers, I could now see him, just standing there, right outside a shop door. His head turned, as always, away from me, even though his torso was now slightly facing towards me, as if he were watching me. Celia's gaze followed mine, and she gripped my hand and squeezed. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "I told him no," I said to her. Celia's grandparents put her on a plane back to Vermont the very next day. Her parents picked her up. She was very glad to be reunited with them and told me over Messenger that she was happy to be home and felt much better. Her messages were very positive for a while. But then, just this morning, she sent me a message that was very frantic. It was not a very coherent message. She kept saying she made a mistake. I asked what she meant, and she told me that the first time the faceless man spoke to her, he asked if she wanted to see his face. She said, "Sure, I guess," and giggled, and told her soon. It was always the same question, and she'd learned the quickest and easiest way to send him away was to say, "Sure, I guess," and he would always giggle and say, "Soon," and leave. But yesterday, apparently, he had told her, "Tomorrow." And now he was coming, she said. He was coming, and her father was at work, and her mother had run a quick errand grocery shopping, and she thought she would be safe with her iPad, but it wasn't enough. She was playing games, but it wasn't enough to keep him away. He was there. "Video call me," I said. And she did, but I barely caught a glimpse of her panicked, teary-eyed face before the call cut out. I rushed to call my granddaughter-in-law, to call my grandson. I told them it was an emergency and they had to get home immediately because Celia said there was an intruder. I did not say faceless man, as they would have assumed me delusional. Then I waited with bated breath. How helpless I felt, all these thousands of miles away. What could I do? While I was waiting for a response, Celia messaged me, and my heart sank. My heart sank because I knew then my great-granddaughter was gone, that they would find no trace of her at all in the house or anywhere. I later asked my grandchildren if they checked the reflections, but they thought I was speaking nonsense. Why would they believe anything from a foolish, delusional old man who fainted the other day while getting ice cream? But I know where she is and who has taken her, and while I do not know if I can ever save her, I will go and do my best. I am old, and it does not matter if I die. Shortly after the video call cut out, this is what she sent to me. Grandpa Vern, would you like to see my face? That's the end of part 2. Thanks for taking the time to listen to one of my videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.